Module 5, Measuring Performance and Establishing Standards. In this module, we are going to learn and understand how to use data from the Carter questions used to identify performance and accountability. So we're going to be introduced to original Carter's 7 key questions. We're going to learn to identify how to calculate success for the CSPG network in 2 different ways. We'll learn what baseball teaches us about measuring performance. We're going to identify industry standards for performance, identify measurement tools and processes, and practice matching outcomes and indicators to measurement tools and processes. So on page 62, in this module, we're going to be moving further into accountability. We're going to be talking about success. How does a community action agency know that it's successful? We're going to be thinking about how to identify what success means to us and considering how to identify our success rates. So using Carter's 7 key questions for performance and accountability, for this session right now we're going to be focused on how many clients are you serving, what services do you give them, and what happens to the clients as a result of the service. We saw in the creation of the indicator that we established a relationship between the number of clients who were served and the number of clients who achieved results, such as 10 out of 50 got a job. That's the basis for the calculation that follows. There are 5 steps on page 63 used to identify expected performance and a final 6th step to determine actual performance. Identify the outcomes, identify the service, activity, intervention, or output that is expected to produce, identify the number of people receiving the service, identify the outcome indicators, that is a quantitative statement where the number or clients or units that are expected to achieve the outcome is added, and estimate performance. You notice that all of those are relating to those key questions we're talking about, question 6, question 3, and question 1. These steps occur prior to the delivery of the service and are used to target or estimate our performance of that service. The final step occurs after the service is provided, and that's when we know what our actual success rate is. Actual performance is calculated after the delivery using the same processes as above, but replacing the projected or targeted numbers with the actual numbers in both the numerator and denominator. The analysis of performance will include comparing the projected success rate percentage with the actual success rate percentage. The primary characteristic of an outcome is that it represents a change or benefit. In this module, we will be considering the rate of change that we are accomplishing. On page 64, establishing targets and measuring performance is an example. A family self-sufficiency program has enrolled 20 families who will receive case management service over the next 6 months. It is estimated or projected that 7 of the families will increase their household income as a result of various activities coordinated by the case manager. Outcome, service or activity, number to be served, the outcome indicator, and the projected success rate. So our outcome is the increase in household income. Our service is the case management of the family sufficiency program, self-sufficiency program. The number to be served, 20 families in a 6-month period. The indicator of that outcome is 7 will increase household income by 10% in 6 months, and 7 who will have achieved the outcome divided by the 20 families receiving services, or 35% will succeed. So that's where this comes into play. So we've got 7 over the 20. We're estimating that 35% of these families are going to be successful. After the service has been provided, the program identified the actual number of clients who achieved the outcome within the established time frame and the calculated success rate. That requires follow-up. That number was 5 families. So actually, it was 5 over 20 enrolled, our actual performance was 25%. On page 65, measuring actual performance with a reduced denominator. So if you're managing your program using results-oriented practices, you're going to want to know how many individuals you need to serve to achieve certain goals. So let's assume that some individuals who enroll will not complete the program. How does that dropout rate affect your performance rate? Badly. For example, out of the 20 families enrolled in this case management program, you'll find that at the end of the program, 15 families completed all the requirements. So do you use 20 as your denominator or base, or do you use 15? Which one should we use? We saw previously that the actual performance rate for this program is 25%, 5 out of 20. If the agency only counts those completing the program, 15, it inflates the success rate from 25% to 33%. So the question is raised, when does a client become a client? It's an important decision we have to establish here at the agency. It's an important place in the discussion of performance. If you project service to 20, but you only actually serve 15, it will affect your performance calculation. If you provide service to 20 and 5 drop out, will you still use the number 20? Well, the answer depends on what you're accounting and what story you're trying to tell. So as you review this fraction, we want to know which is better, 25% or 33%? Well, the question is, there are different statistics and they tell different stories. So what is the value of counting all the individuals who are enrolled, the 20? You have to expand your resources for all of these, so you have to know how many you started with. Also, you want to know how many you need to enroll to achieve your expected target. If you just use the number of completers, you'd have to have the information you need. You would not have the information you need to manage your program. So you need both. Another reason to use both these numbers is to know how successful your customers were when they did complete the program. And that's important information that we need to share with our customers. So, on page 66, we have an activity. What is our projected success rate? So you'll see there, we're going to be working off of this poster here. What is our projected success rate? So we made, write this down. We know from over here, our outcome indicators, that we're going to serve 10 out of 10 or 100% within our 1 year. There it is. So you can see there we're taking the numerator and the denominator and we're just doing our math and figuring out our percentages. Once the service is complete, we convert that statement by using those numbers. Is our percent good? What is the standard? So now we can put in our results over on our logic model. Do you mind? Thank you. You'll notice Jerry's going to place our little R for our results over in column 5. on page 67, this is where, this is my favorite part of the training. So, it's baseball. What's not to lie? Establishing performance standards. What does it mean to bat 1,000? Does anybody know? Perfect. It means you get a hit every time up to bat. Baseball has been collecting statistics since before 1876 when they started to keep track of every hitter's 1,000 times at bat. If anybody could bat 1,000, that means they got a hit every single time he was up at the plate in 1,000 tries. Now note that getting a hit is hitting the ball and getting on base safely without the other team making an error. So how often do you think professional baseball players come close to batting 1,000? Never. Never. That term migrated into common language in the 1920s for non-baseball usage. It actually comes to mean the unattainable, as a perfect record is unrealistic. So I have some baseball cards here I'm going to pass out. And to make it a little easier, I went ahead and made a copy of it and blew it up to make it nice and easy for you to read. Otherwise, if you're like me, trying to read these old, it ain't going to work. So I'll hand that one to you.
Thank you for pulling it out.
Yeah.
These cards from your personal collection.
They are. I ordered them on Amazon. I have one more. Christy, Dwight, would y'all like a baseball card to read? I need somebody to read it. So, on the back of your baseball card is a batting average. Here we go. I want you to take a look at that batting average for a moment. All right. One by one, if you don't mind, read off to me the batting average of the batter that you have. Brent?
The batting average, the overall, or?
Should be overall. I should have marked it there at the bottom. Yeah, that's the one.
0.302.
0.302. All right.
0.260.
0.290.
0.290. Next.
192.
192. Dwight?
318.
318.
0.178.
178. So we've got almost 18% here. 19%. 26%. 29. We got 30% and 31. So what we see here is that everything above 300, that's going to be considered excellent. Between 250 and 300, that's your average batter. That's pretty good. Down here is subpar. The 17 to 19%, those are the ones that are your lowest batting averages. So,
How did you come up with that decision? Just like of what was the highest and lowest? I mean, obviously the numbers are there, but like, what makes 26% a middle?
okay. Well, that's based on the history, okay, that baseball is collected. We'll get through to
Okay.
that. Yeah. So, on page 68, looking at Yogi Berra. So we know that the number of times a player is at bat, his attendance, or his participation, in words we would use, baseball wants to know what is the result of his being at bat. Did the player officially get up to bat and get a hit? That result, his outcome indicator, is a performance calculation called his batting average. So we can see here that on this page, that Yogi got 179 hits out of 584 times at bat for a 307 average. We know that in baseball, 300 or better is a superstar. 250 to 299, that's your average baseball player, and the least successful of those is 250 and below. Yogi Berra was a superstar. But unless baseball taught us that 30% was highly successful, we probably would have thought of him as a failure. Because 30% is not a great number, right?
That's why I asked, because I don't know
Yep.
baseball, and I was like, well, none of those are good.
Yeah. So, we know that they've been collecting stats for over 136 years, and they've developed standards of performance. Hitting 300 or succeeding about 30% of the time is recognized as an accepted measure of excellence. That ball player achieves that is considered a superstar. If they had not discovered the relationship between a hitting standard and winning games through collection and analysis of data, we wouldn't know that we were observing success at that level. So what does baseball do that we don't? Clearly defined performance indicator, they hit, they got on base, related to the outcome of winning games. They observed performance, they kept records, analyzed that data, they developed a benchmark of excellence based on their analysis, and they publicized what they learned. So the public knows that 30% is excellent. There's been little change in that definition of excellence in all that time. There have been many attempts to improve performance during that time. However, whether they've made better bats, they've designed and built better ballparks to favor the hitters, they've changed the baseball to make it more lively, they've changed the height of the pitching mound, none of that has increased the performance of the average baseball player to hit better than 300 on a regular basis. Is it reasonable to expect 10% improvement every year in our field? So moving over to page 70. So take a quick moment. We're going to go through a few of these. Success measures in industry. What do you think the executive management recruitment placement rate is? Any ideas what kind of a number that would be? We got a bunch of HR people here.
What's the question?
The top one on
I know
page
that,
seven,
but I mean, what are they asking?
what is our placement rate of executive management recruitment?
So not what is our expectation for the placement rate to be, but what is our actual placement rate?
What is the actual placement rate for public, non-private sector expectations? What do you think that percentage would be?
It's 2% or something low.
It is a low number, but it's 20%. New magazines survive over 12 months. What percentage of a new magazine do you think makes it 12 months?
10%.
3.3. In movies, 1 in 6, or 16.7%, make a profit. On Broadway, 1 in 7, or 14.3%, make a profit. Music CDs, 5%. Prescription drugs, 20% make it to market. Of the prescription drugs that make it to market, 33% make a profit. Pfizer, how many do you think, 1 in how many new drugs do you think it takes to make it to market? And it takes 10 to 12 years to develop that product. One in how many?
100.
100. 1% of their new drugs actually make it to market. At DuPont, 1 in 250 or 0.004% of ideas to generate one major marketable new product. On-time railroad delivery, plus or minus 24 hours. That's what they consider on time in the railroad. It'll be there tomorrow, sometime. So, in baseball, 1 hit and 3 times at bat, or 333 or 33% is a superstar. 1 in 4 times, or 25%, is a successful hitter. Community action must establish our own standards of performance and communicate these standards of performance to elected officials, government, public and private funders, the general public, the media, and to the staff of our agencies and our CSBG eligible entities. So we know that a high percentage of success is frequently unrealistic and not attainable in human services. Industry is very comfortable with a modest measurement of success. Why? Because it translates into profit. In human services, there's a strong tendency on both the part of the funder and our agencies to deliver programs with expected high rates of success. The populations being served through our agencies require intensive services and represent complex problems requiring complex and frequently long-term solutions. Whereas many other industries have established and accepted measures of success, human services rarely have either, indicating that our community action agencies can live with modest measures of success, but they will need to educate the public regarding what is possible to achieve and what is not. Performance standards in industry are modest. There are no 70, 80, or 90% performance indicators, but modest ones ranging from 0.004 to 33%. These performance measures are not arbitrary, but they come from long-term commitment to collect and analyze data to determine what is possible and realistic, and no one challenges those statistics. They are the norms and they are proven. We do not have the same experience in the human services field, but we should. Probably the single most reason why industry is satisfied with low, modest, or realistic performance is that the performance is also tied to the return on investment, also known as profit. Even with low success rates, these ventures still make a profit. Does it make a difference to the shareholders of DuPont that they are 0.004% successful if their stock returns 15% annually on their investment? I'm happy with that. No, but in human services, we also need to develop measures of success for our programs and services and communicate these to the public, funders, clients, and elected officials. Agencies should first research success measures and use these before creating our own. If success measures are unavailable, then we have a responsibility to collect data to develop our own realistic outcome indicators. Once you identify the outcome, we need to establish our indicators and performance rate to be able to evaluate our performance. We have to be realistic when projecting the number of clients who are expected to achieve the outcome. Use real numbers for the target if you're known and can be estimated with reasonable accuracy. On page 71, performance targeting for NPIs. NPIs are about performance. They identify success like we just discussed, using a calculation based on numbers served and numbers achieving results. Performance in this case refers back to one of the key provisions of the GRPA. Agencies must be able to accurately identify performance goals or targets prior to beginning service. That is an expectation of legislation. When reporting on the NPIs, agencies are asked to project the number to be served and the number to achieve the outcome in 3 areas. The National Performance Indicator 1.1, which is employment, 1.3, economic asset enhancement and utilization, and 6.3, child and family development. The ability of the community action agencies to identify our own performance targets continues to be of interest to the administration, to Congress, and to the national network of community action agencies. The activity of engaging in successful targeting fulfills an essential need for compliance with elements of the Government Performance and Result Acts of 1993. In this performance calculation, you are comparing the number of targeted or projected outcomes, which becomes our denominator, and with the actual number who achieved those outcomes, which becomes the numerator. The calculation does not use the number of those receiving services. This measurement is designed to identify the ability of each agency to project their performance. Your ability to manage your performance effectively depends on your ability to accurately project how many outcomes you expect to document. On page 73, another dimension of performance. In this example we used previously, that we projected that 7 out of 20 families receiving case management services are expected to achieve the outcome. This is the number projected, our target, and it becomes the denominator of the fraction we are creating to establish the performance rate. When the program was completed, we found that 5 families actually achieved the outcome. That number becomes the numerator of the fraction. Your ability to successfully project your performance for this project is actually, where's my good marker at? It's actually 5/7 for 71%. So that was a pretty good estimate. The state CSBG offices that collect data that report to NASCAP are asked to provide follow-up explanations regarding any percent that is not within the range of 80 to 120. In our example, our numbers are very small, but if we multiply by 10 or 100, the difference between the target number and the actual number becomes more apparent. If we projected 70 outcomes, the acceptable range of actual outcomes will be 56 to 84. This statistic, the 71%, that's useful to the public policymakers and to Congress. It fulfills the requirement of the GPRA that each agency is able to project or target the number of outcomes. So we learned in our last segment that we must calculate actual performance with an indicator which includes a fraction and a percent. So now we're going to use those two numbers as the fractions. I think I just did that. Yeah, that's done. Page 73. So if we take a look here, establishing measurement tools and processes. When we consider the outcomes we expect to achieve, we need to consider how we will measure the accomplishment of the outcomes. So a few of the shortcuts to help us. 1, minimize the use of soft outcomes. 2, use a measurement tool to capture outcomes. 3, use a pre-existing measurement tool before creating one. And 4, research our own organizations that may have an outcome framework before creating our own. So minimizing the use of soft outcomes. Occasionally we have to identify outcomes that are called soft outcomes because there's a little hard data to support them. An example might be achievement of self-esteem or self-confidence, meeting or exceeding one's own goals, self-report of achieving an outcome without any objective backup, exclusive or inappropriate use of customer satisfaction surveys, and anecdotal stories, which would replace hard or anecdotal or quantitative data. So an example here might be a report card. That might be a document that would show a child's grades and it would allow you to determine if they improved or not. The data from the report card would be entered into an electronic system. You can retrieve, you can aggregate, you can analyze it later. We have examples here of both output and outcome measurement tools. So page 74, use a measurement tool to capture outcomes. The data collection or measurement tool must be identified that captures client data for each program or service. Intake and assessment, pre and post test, a customer or client satisfaction survey, scales, like a functioning scale or a self-sufficiency scale. Done all of that. Page 75, identifying the evidence. On Drucker's question 4, what are our results? Drucker reminds us that just like we looked at qualitative and quantitative need data, we need to identify both qualitative and quantitative measures. Qualitative measures address the depth and the breadth of a change within the context, while quantitative measures use standard definitions. We have to have a clear idea of what we're going to measure, which is our outcome indicator, and also how we will measure the results, about the evidence we will use to support those claims. So think about it. How do you know? What proof can you provide that an outcome has been achieved, and what documentation do you have? So, page 76. So now we need to identify some tools to measure our outcome indicator, and we'll also identify data collection processes. The last 3 columns on our logic model there, number, see if I can read it right, 6, 7, and 8, there are details on the emphasis of documenting our results. So we stop our logic model with the statement of the indicator without identifying how we're going to measure it. The tool that is the proof, the process for collecting the data, or the fruits of the collection, then the focus on the outcome may not be clearly identified or produced. It means it might not get the attention. So, chart. So on page 76, what are our measurement tools? So we need to consider the needs, the outcomes, the strategies, and outcome indicators we previously identified, which is our families do not have safe and affordable housing. Our outcome is to families obtain safe and affordable housing. Our service provide first and last month's rent. So we need to figure out how are we going to measure that. So what would be some measurement tools we could use to measure our success if we're going to complete this? Any ideas? What would we use to measure our success for providing first and last month's rent?
How many, what do you call those forms you complete?
Intakes.
No, not
Vouchers.
it's something else, but basically, yes.
We'll call it agency paperwork.
Yeah.
You have an idea?
In HMIS, there's an assessment that asks, you know, how's it worded? Out of so many, you know, out of the last 25 nights, how many nights have you spent somewhere that's not
meant for
meant for human
habitation.
habitation? So if we can do kind of a comparison of where they are now versus
Pre and
where they
post
started.
tests.
Yeah.
Surveys.
Okay. So
So we can,
a survey.
pre and post, yeah.
What about lease agreements? Rent receipts?
Proof of employment.
for,
Yeah.
This is for the housing.
For the housing.
Don't let your mission drift there.
yeah, watch that mission.
That would be beneficial if we had the obtain and maintain.
Right.
Yeah,
Then you could show, yes, they have income to cover rent in the future.
yeah,
But with our outcome simply being obtaining it, we look at what measurement tools can show that they have obtained it.
so I think that shows us our measurement tool, okay? So how would we, the next part of this is our data source. So who's responsible? How is that data collected? So who gets the rent receipt, the lease, the pre, the post survey? That might be
Case manager.
case manager. Could be case records would be where we would pull it from. Any other ideas?
The vendor files is where the accounting records.
There you go.
About your monthly reports.
I think that would tie in with our records. So the last column, which is frequency of the data collection and reporting. So how often do we do this? Do we do it daily? Do we do it weekly? Do we do it monthly? Quarterly? Annually?
This is just to obtain, not to maintain.
Right.
So,
So we would probably check it monthly, right? So with this, we've got our measurement tool, we've got our data source, and we've got our frequency of collection. And with that, we can put 3 more Post-its up on our logic model.
Does it mean we're done?
Not even close.
With that
That's what I
logic.
was thinking. It's full, we're done.
Nice try, right?
876. And so for module 5, that brings us to our key point summary. Measuring performance and establishing standards. This module provides a definition of success using outcomes and indicators. It shows how 3 of the Carter questions, 1, 3, and 6, right here, 1, 3, 6, we've been over those, can be used as a foundation for accountability. It assures the focus on both outputs and outcomes, as they are both important measures. Introduces concepts of performance targets and actual accomplishments. Makes the case that performance in human services should be made realistic, similar to that found in the private sector from industry standards and typified by our baseball cards, based on actual data from the agencies. Provides the formula for identifying agencies' ability to target or project their success, and identifies the measurement tools and processes. And with that, we finish module 5, and we go to module 6 with Jerry.